today I'm going to be talking about how to get into Stanford and the Ivy League. I watched a lot of these videos and I found them really helpful, so now that I finished the process, I thought I would also kind of share my thoughts and beliefs on what I think is important into getting to some of these schools. Now, I feel like this video calls for a couple of disclaimers. So I have never been in an admissions room. I'm not an admissions officer. I'm not a professional. I haven't seen my application file. So all of those are important to keep in mind. My only, sort of credentials in giving my thoughts on this is I've done thousands of hours of research on the college admissions process, and I just applied to a lot of these schools and was admitted to Stanford and some of the Ivy Leagues, and so I just kind of wanted to share my opinion. So along with that, following all of these steps by no means guarantees admission into the Ivy League or any other top school, and again, these are just my beliefs on what I believe to be true about the admissions process and getting in, but again, I'm not 100% sure. I'm just a person who just went through the application cycle, and all I know is what I put on my application and what I think ultimately worked. The other disclaimer that I will give is that a lot of the opinions and beliefs that I'm about to give are sort of general rules of thumb and are not going to be applicable to every single applicant because there are always going to be exceptions, and so this is just what I think is true for the majority of applicants, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's indicative of everyone's circumstance when applying to a lot of these schools. So with all of that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get into this video. So the first sort of step, and I think that this is important for the majority of applicants, is that you need to be academically meeting a certain threshold. What this means is challenging yourself with the courses you take, studying for your standardized tests if you can, and just pushing yourself academically, pursuing opportunities at local community colleges if you can't take AP classes at your school, just pushing yourself academically in whatever capacity you can, and showing that you care about knowledge, you care about learning, all of that's important, and then doing well academically in whatever environment that you're in. So after you've met that certain academic threshold and you are applying to these schools, this is what I believe is one of the more important things in getting into the Ivy League in schools like Stanford that I feel like people need to talk about more, is that you need to be a person in your application. You need to talk and show that you care about the world around you, that you're curious about the world around you, because all of that's important, because ultimately your admissions officers are not going to bat for you at the admissions table if they don't like you. If you don't come off as a likable person in your application, if you just kind of come off as a list of accomplishments and not a real person, and you don't let the admissions officer see those aspects to yourself through your essays, through what you write about yourself, they're not going to bat for you no matter what your accomplishments are. And so I think that this is pretty important to keep in mind, is that I believe a lot of these schools, when they have this many applications and this many applicants, they're really looking to see who are the people that we think are going to be good classmates, that are going to be good citizens in our community. And I think that's really important into getting into the Ivy League and Stanford. The next piece of advice has to do with extracurricular activities and the idea of you have to be really good at one thing, or you have to have a spike, or you have to be well-rounded with the spike, or you just have to be well-rounded. Or, all this stuff that you hear about, you have to really excel in one thing, or you have to be spiky, or you have to have different corners, or it's like a whole bunch of different shapes that I'm not even aware of. And you even see on college websites now, people are saying we take both well-rounded applicants and we take spiky applicants. And honestly, essentially what a spike means is that you're good or you excel in a certain area, usually in terms of extracurriculars. But what I think ultimately is, I think, again, these colleges take all different kinds of people. I think what really you need to try to do is, when you have about 40,000 applications to a lot of these schools, you just need to stand out. It can come in the form of diverse experiences, diverse thoughts, ideas, aspirations, goals, the way you grew up, your background, where you grew up, the way you lived, all of that plays a role. And as long as you can show that you stand out, that you're special, that you're unique, and it can be through your extracurriculars, being really good at one thing, or it can just be in the way you grew up, in your background, anything. I think all of these things are important, and you want to highlight the aspects of yourself that make you completely you. And so in terms of extracurriculars, I definitely know for a fact that colleges have taken individuals who are more well-rounded, a lot of these top schools, in terms of extracurricular activities, but they were diverse in maybe their essays and what they wrote about and their experiences and how they grew up, and that's what made them stand out, right? And so ultimately, these colleges are trying to build a diverse class of people. They want people who are super great and unique and interesting and make for good, different, people to talk to. Yes, I think it can help if you have something that you really excel at and that is just your one thing that you're the best in the state at, or you're the best in the country at even. And of course that can make you stand out, but I think just whatever your experiences are as a person, make sure you're highlighting that in your application, and that'll do great things for you. All right, so the good thing that I will say about all of this is that everyone is unique. Everyone does stand out in some kind of capacity, as long as you are communicating that in your application, right? And again, standing out in terms of background, in terms of thought, in terms of experience, in terms of aspirations, in terms of anything, everyone is unique in some type of way. You're communicating the parts about yourself that make you unique and interesting and would make you a great classmate and a good person to talk to. So that kind of leads me into the next piece of advice when it comes to extracurriculars, when it comes to how you spend your time outside of the classroom, is to do stuff that you genuinely care about and you're genuinely passionate about. Why do I say this? I say this because you want to do what makes you happy, and you don't want to waste your time doing stuff that doesn't make you happy. Do stuff that you care about, that you're passionate about. When it comes to writing your college essays, it is so easy to communicate the things that you did in high school, the things that you cared about, why you're doing the things you care about, if you genuinely wanted to do them. And I think that's something that's so important. The fact of the matter is, what looks good on college applications is doing the things, exploring the things that you're genuinely curious about and that are important to you. And so looking back over high school, I really did not do a single thing that I didn't want to do. So do stuff that you genuinely cared about. All of the stuff that I wrote about in my college application, for the most part, I'm continuing to do afterwards. And again, I'll make another video about everything that I did, but it's stuff that I'm continuing to do, stuff that I want to do for the rest of my life. And it's great because actually I feel like applying to a lot of these schools pushes you to sort of explore your passions, push yourself out of your comfort zone, and ultimately you just end up being the best version of yourself when applying to these schools, which I think is wonderful. Next is, when it comes to your letters of recommendation, pick teachers who really know you. And this goes back to one of my earlier pieces of advice, is coming off as someone who's an actual person in your application, someone that the admissions officers like and someone that they want to bat for when it comes time for admissions committee. I think it's so important that you pick teachers to write your letters that you've developed genuine relationships with, people that have gotten to know you, gotten to know about what you care about, your passions, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom, people that can write about you, can talk about you in every way. All of that is extremely important. And so I really do think that your letters of recommendation play a large role, because if you think about it, just in terms of, I don't know how much time, each admissions officer spends on your application. It might be different for each applicant, but I've heard from different people it's around like 8 minutes, but they're going through these applications pretty quickly in the first round. And if you think about it, these letters are pretty extensive. So your letters and your essays are probably what admissions officers are spending the most time reading. And so if it's one thing if you're writing in your application all the things about yourself, etc. But if someone else can write those types of things about you and write about who you are, that's extremely important. And so make sure, you're establishing those relationships with your teachers. I loved all of my teachers at my high school. They were all so amazing in so many ways. I took the time to hang out with them after school because I like spending time with them. They invest a lot of time in your success, and I think it's important to get to know them. And of course, develop those types of relationships and get to know them. Okay, the next piece of advice is to fill out your application in a way that highlights you. And what I mean by that is, let's say one of your extracurriculars is speech and debate, which was one of mine. don't just talk about speech and debate in general. Talk about your specific role in speech and debate, right? Let's say you're starting a club at your high school. Well, it's one thing to start a club that has 10 participants. It's another thing to start a club and you got 100 people to join, right? And you're now competing nationally. Those are very different things, right? So when you say, oh, I started a club at my high school, make sure you're talking about your accomplishments in a way that really allows the admissions officers to see what it is that you are doing, right? Because I think it's important. You know, when I talked about my extracurriculars, I really wanted to make sure the admissions officers understand, no, this was something I did. This is exactly what I did for it, me specifically, not just what the activity is in general. So make sure, and this is applicable in every part of the application, even in the honors section, the academic honors. I didn't really have a lot of academic honors because I think a lot of the honors that I'd gotten were more community service related. And so what I did was I actually put some stuff in there that I think was a little bit unorthodox for an honor section. I was a panelist at an international autism conference, and so I put that in my honor section. And so again, that's not a traditional national merit finalist award, etc., but you kind of get the idea, is that you can be, you know, it's your application, so fill it out in a way that I think highlights who you are. Okay, the next piece of advice, and this isn't one that everyone can use, it really just depends on which Ivy League schools you're applying for, and it doesn't apply to Stanford either, but I think, you know, something that you should consider is applying early decision does help significantly. And so I actually don't know what all the updates are this year because of, you know, the COVID situation, but I know at least for this past admission cycle, Columbia, Penn, Dartmouth, Cornell, and Brown, you can all apply ED for. Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and Stanford were all early action. As far as early action goes, I don't know how much it helps. I mean, you can see that obviously the acceptance rates in the early action round are much higher than in the regular decision round, but at the same time, the qualifications of the applicant pool in the early round are typically higher. So I actually don't know how much early action helps. I really can't speak to that, but I will say that early decision does help for sure. Next, I'll say be smart with your essays, and so your schools are asking you, and this is just goes in general, why you want to come here, or specifically, you know, like what's appealing to you about the school. Don't just say superficial stuff like, oh, because it's an Ivy League school, or oh, because I like the name, or like stuff like that. I mean, I don't think people want to hear that, and I think you'd be surprised just from my conversations with admissions officers how often people do say stuff like that. I think talk about specifically, genuinely why you want to go to those schools. And so you also, on the other side of it, you know, I mean, a lot of the times people will be like, I want to go to this school because of this specific class that's offered by this specific professor at this specific time. Actually, I think people have written that and have been successful with it. I didn't do anything like that either. So just make sure when you're filling those out, you're doing genuinely why you want to go to those schools, right? And I think if it's the genuine answer, it's the correct answer. This is the last piece of advice that I have about getting into Stanford and the Ivy League, and the most important piece of advice is to actually apply. Do not kind of last minute be like, oh my gosh, too many essays, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get in, I shouldn't even apply. You don't want to sort of leave high school regretting that you didn't apply to some of the schools that you wanted to apply to, because you're not going to get in unless you apply. I hope all of you enjoyed this video. I know this was a lot of information, but I thought it was stuff that I really wanted to put out there, and just sort of, again, my beliefs, things that I believe or think are true about getting into these schools. I hope you enjoyed. I'm just starting out this channel. I really hope you are liking the videos that I'm producing. If you're interested in more college essay videos, go ahead and subscribe down below, or college application videos in general. I also have a couple other videos out about like food reviews and things like that, but I'm really starting this channel, so I really want video suggestions. You can comment down below if you have any ideas. You can also DM me at rad_shaw, which is my Instagram, and I would love to hear from all of you. And the other thing that I'm going to be starting is some college consulting and also helping with writing college essays. So if you're interested in any of that, I'm going to leave an email down below where you can contact me, and I'll tell you about all of that. So I hope all of you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to all of you soon.